Senator Rand Paul, the great state of Kentucky, joins us now. We're going to get into really serious questions, but probably the biggest story in the state of Kentucky right now, and I bet you know where I'm going, Senator Paul. John Calipari, longtime University of Kentucky basketball coach, no longer there. I believe you've managed to get elected in Kentucky despite being a Duke guy. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
You had to bring that up. Now you had to bring that up. Now they're going to probably want to impeach me. They know I went to Duke. My goodness, you should have never brought that up.
Big Christian Laettner fan, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. So John Calipari out. Do you have any reaction? I know you're a basketball fan. I'm not even kidding. This is by far the biggest story in your state, I'm sure. And they're talking about, I think, trying to hire Scott Drew from Baylor, and I believe your dad has a good connection with Baylor, if I'm not mistaken. What's your take on this Kentucky basketball situation?
No, that's actually me. I went to Baylor undergrad, so I've got a connection with Baylor. Big fan of the Baylor Bears. But, I always liked Calipari. And, I think sometimes the fans at some of these schools, we get kind of greedy. It's like, when's the last time we had a national championship? Damn, it's been 3 or 4 years, hasn't it, since we won the national championship. So sometimes it's that. And sometimes it may be. I don't follow it close enough to say, oh, he should have called this player, he should have guarded this player this way, or run this offense. So I don't know that I can give the best advice on who should be the coach or what the offense should be. But in my relations with Calipari, I thought they were good, and I thought he seemed to be a reasonable guy.
Senator Paul, thanks for being here. I have a different question for you, different topic, I mean. You've claimed that there's a smoking gun tying Fauci and NIH research to the desire to create COVID-type viruses. And I think the subtext of all this, or maybe just the background necessary for people to know, is Fauci has been dishonest about this over a long period of time. What do we know now, and where are we in terms of getting to the bottom of NIH Fauci ties to the virus and its origins?
About 2 years ago, a whistleblower revealed that the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the lab in China, wanted to get American taxpayer dollars to create a virus, a coronavirus that had a special way to infect human cells called a furin cleavage site. So they asked for money in 2018. This was asked of DARPA. DARPA didn't give them the money, but it was also presented to 15 different agencies. And nobody from DARPA, nobody from the 15 agencies, and the agencies included Anthony Fauci's NIAID as well as NIH, they all heard about this proposal, and none of them warned us that the lab in Wuhan wanted to work on creating a virus that it turns out looks very scarily similar to what COVID-19 was. So in January of 2020, when we discovered the COVID-19 virus and we look at the sequence, at least 15 different agencies of government should have been going, holy cow, the virus looks just like what the Wuhan Institute was asking us to help them create 2 years ago. An alarm bell should have gone off saying, by golly, they did it. They actually created this Frankenstein virus that they told us they wanted to create, even though we didn't give them the money. Instead, we would know none of this but for a brave lieutenant colonel at DARPA who became a whistleblower, told his superiors, told his chain of command, and then revealed it to an inspector general that this grant existed, that Wuhan was searching to create this kind of a virus 2 years before. Otherwise, the government has completely covered this up, including Anthony Fauci, who lied in committee and said he had never heard of this proposal. We now have evidence that not only was his agency briefed about this proposal, but we have evidence that his agency was going to provide a lab, the Rocky Mountain Lab, which is part of NIAID, Fauci's organization at NIH, that they were going to do part of the research to create this virus. Now, they disappear from the proposal later on, but we now know that Anthony Fauci did have information about this, and he hasn't been honest with the public.
Okay. I 100% agree with everything you just said. I know Buck does too. I read your book. I think you have been better than any politician on a federal level at all relating to COVID. I think you're right that Anthony Fauci lied under oath. I think he lied under oath multiple times. Is there ever going to be any consequences for Anthony Fauci for the lies that he told? What should happen? What can happen? Is anything ever going to happen to him for lying to Congress?
Every week I return from Washington, I knock on my home door, my wife greets me, and instead of giving me a kiss or a hug, she says, how come Anthony Fauci's not in jail yet? So I hear this from my wife. I hear it from you, Clay. I hear it from everybody else, and it's true. I wish I could put him in jail. I wish I could prosecute him. But the prosecution has to come from the attorney general. And so we've sent 2 criminal referrals on Anthony Fauci to have him prosecuted for lying to Congress. This week, I'm sending a 3rd one, and this is based on his denial to Senator Marshall in the Help Committee. He denied having any knowledge of this grant. I find that stretches credulity because he had a representative in the meeting, but not only did he have a representative in the meeting, his agency was part of the proposal. They were proposing that some of the research for this particular project be done at the Rocky Mountain Lab, which is part of Fauci's domain. So I find it very hard to believe he's telling the truth on any of this. But all of the people who were aware of this research going on that have been quiet, that have been covering this up, we're going to try to get all of their names, have them all deposed, have them all interviewed for why they didn't bring this up, why they didn't inform any of us that there was a great deal of evidence from 2018 showing that the Wuhan virus was trying to create this virus, and they should have all been calling up Anthony Fauci and the president and whoever else they could get hold of in January of 2020, and they were all silent. Or if they were calling people up, they haven't been honest about it and they haven't said it publicly. But we're going to get to the bottom of this. I just don't have the power to prosecute anyone because I'm not the attorney general.
Okay, let's say that Trump wins in 2024. Do you believe, and I know you would probably be involved, maybe he'd even try to get you in the cabinet on some way, but you probably would be involved and or know the attorney general nominee well. Do you think there is someone that Trump could appoint as an attorney general that would be willing to bring charges? Or do you think Big Pharma is so powerful and there's such a desire to sweep everything under the rug that there's almost no one as an attorney general that would be willing to go after Anthony Fauci? Not only what's right, but politically, do you think there's an AG nominee out there if Trump won that would do it?
Well, this is the crux of the question about whether I get heavily involved in Trump's reelection or not. I haven't gotten involved so far because I want to hear from him that there'll never be any more lockdowns, that he will absolutely steadfastly oppose lockdowns. But I also want to hear from him that he's not going to put these corporate cronies back in. I mean, the head of the FDA was Scott Gottlieb, who's now on the board at Pfizer, who we know from Missouri versus Biden that Scott Gottlieb was calling up Twitter and trying to suppress any opponents of vaccination for any reason, such as myself saying that your children don't need to be vaccinated for COVID. Those kind of things were being suppressed by Scott Gottlieb. That was a bad pick. If he's going to pick people like that again, I'm not sure I'm that excited. He also picked Bill Barr. Not that excited. He was more of a defender of Pfizer, more of a defender of the surveillance state. He picked the wrong person. Now, I think if Trump were on the phone now, he'll tell you he made a mistake with Bill Barr. He made a mistake maybe with Scott Gottlieb. He definitely made a mistake with many of the others in the administration as well. But we've got to do a better job. And I'm not that excited about working in a campaign if we're going to get more corporate cronies from the pharmaceutical industry. I want objective voices that are going to clean house. I want a clean house at the FBI. I want a clean house at the CIA. I want a clean house at HHS. I want all of the COVID records. I want every last scrap of COVID records of the cover-up, and I want to get to the bottom of it. And if I can get that kind of promise from Donald Trump, then I'll get more involved and more excited about his campaign.
Senator Paul, what do you think about Donald Trump's recent proclamation on where he stands for the issue of abortion as a states' rights issue versus being vocal about wanting some federal legislation on it? How do you see that constitutionally and politically?
For 50 years, those of us in the pro-life movement have marched to overturn Roe v. Wade. And now in the face of victory, people are saying, oh, it's not enough, we got to do something different, or now we need a federal law. Look, I'm for life from beginning to end. I'm a pro-life person. For religious reasons, I believe that we're made in the image of our God. I think life is precious, and you shouldn't exterminate it or destroy life. But at the same time, I'm a believer in that we won the battle on Roe. It's gone back to the states. There is no winning a ban of any kind, unfortunately. There are not 60 votes for the Senate, but fortunately there's not 60 votes to legalize abortion everywhere either. So we're at an impasse in the Senate. We just won a big victory. This is being sorted out in a very big and emotional way throughout the democracy. I'm for letting the states sort it out. Doesn't mean I'm against saying it's that we should protect life at certain stages everywhere. But for right now, politically, I think this needs to be sorted out in state by state. And some of these laws are 100 years old. They're going to have to be changed or updated or left the same. But this is going to have to be sorted out at the state level. So on this, I think Donald Trump's right.
Senator Rand Paul with us right now. You mentioned the idea of we need to have some sort of reform with the FBI, with the CIA, with large government investigatory groups. Couple of part question here. One, do you think we'll ever get a truth in basically 9/11 style commission on COVID? Should we get it? Secondly, how concerned are you about the overarching surveillance state, and what do we need to do to reform that?
First of all, you got to appoint people at the top, but you got to clean house. I mean, like, for example, this isn't surveillance state, but with Fauci, he was in charge for 40 years. You can't have his cronies still running the place. So you got to really clean house at NIH. It's the same way with FBI, though. I mean, it became so politicized. The idea that we would investigate with secret warrants in a secret court that's supposed to be for foreigners, that we investigate a major political party candidate in Donald Trump and people around him, is obscene. And if there were good progressives left in this country, they would be saying exactly the same, but they've all gone quiet. They've all lost their voice. What kind of world is it where we'd allow people to secretly investigate political candidates? I mean, we shouldn't let them do it to anyone, but it's even more extraordinarily bad and wrong-headed to let it happen to political candidates. So, but it's about appointments, it's about, knowing to pick the right people and taking your time to do it and asking for advice, frankly, I gave Donald Trump quite a bit of advice on picks, and John Bolton, I said, absolutely not on John Bolton. He wrote in his memoir that he called me a name and said I blocked him from being Secretary of State, and thank God I did. But then Trump brought him back in as National Security Advisor. And if you talk to Donald Trump for more than 5 minutes, you realize he actually leans libertarian on foreign policy. He's more of a realist. He's less of a guy who wants to always go bomb other countries. We have less war. And yes, he picked John Bolton, the biggest warmonger that's been in Washington in the last 40 years. So, he's got to do a better job, frankly. Everybody loves Donald Trump. Nobody wants to say anything negative. I do, too. A lot I like about him. I like him personally. I've been around him a bunch. But he's got to do a better job. He's also got to ask advice. Look, on this COVID thing, I've been in it from top to bottom, and I don't get any calls saying, well, who should we pick for this? Who should we pick? I don't want a job from anybody, but I certainly am there to try to help a Trump administration get the people who will never put us in a lockdown again, that will never mandate masks, that will never mandate vaccines, will leave us the hell alone, stay out of our churches, all of that. But they have to take some advice on it and not immediately go to Big Pharma to populate the FDA or the CDC.
Senator Rand Paul, everybody. Sir, always appreciate you joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
We share the news we see with you here. We do our best to make sense of all the insanity out there. We highlight smart decisions. We applaud bravery when we see it. And in a sense, in the stock market, that's exactly what Mark Chaikin does. Mark worked on Wall Street for 50 years. In his time on the street, he invented 3 new indices for the NASDAQ and has predicted some of the biggest market shifts of the past decade, including the most recent mania and AI stocks. Mark says Americans are about to miss out on a critical turning point in this AI frenzy. He's calling this a new dawn for U.S. stocks, and Mark predicts dozens of specific companies will be impacted in just the next 90 days. That's why Mark has agreed to share one of his favorite AI stocks to buy with you now. He put everything you need to know in a new presentation you can watch for free on a website set up for you, 2024aistock.com. That's 2024aistock.com. One more so you can see Mark's favorite AI stocks right now, 2024aistock.com, paid for by Chaikin Analytics.